Well, we've been talking about this historic flooding. It is slamming Western Washington, forcing mass evacuations, washing out roads and highways, triggering a statewide emergency. At the same time, far from home, the U.S. is facing a growing outcry over deadly boat strikes on suspected drug runners off the coast of Venezuela, raising serious questions about the legality of those missions and who should be held accountable. Working this growing crisis from the halls of Congress is Washington Representative Adam Smith, representing the 9th District. He's also chair of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. So first, I want to get to the catastrophic flooding that we're seeing. The president, as you know, approved our state's request for an emergency declaration. What does that mean for residents, for local businesses?
Well, hopefully what it means is quicker relief and more money to deal with the challenges that we are facing. It's been a devastating impact throughout our region, as you know. So it gives us the resources and also the manpower commitment from FEMA to help people, get relocated, hopefully eventually rebuild, just deal with all the challenges. So I'm pleased, and I want to thank Governor Ferguson in particular was right out front making that request. Senator Murray, our whole delegation really pitched in to make sure that happened.
Thank you, and we're going to be tracking that, of course, closely. So I want to turn now to what's happening in the Caribbean, where at least 87 people have been killed in these U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats. As the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, what is your role in the investigation into all of that?
Well, oversight. Basically to make sure they're following the law and also to express Congress's opinion where possible on what should or shouldn't be being done down there. And remember, all of this is happening without congressional approval. Now, I mean, after 9/11, we got the authorization for the use of military force to respond specifically to al-Qaeda and their affiliates. And there were a lot of problems with that. As the years wore on, it expanded to a larger and larger group of people, but it was authorized by Congress and in direct response to the 9/11 attacks. What's going on now in the Caribbean has no congressional authorization and has not been clearly explained in terms of where it's going and how long it might continue. So it's deeply alarming, and I think Congress should be doing a broad investigation on the strikes in general. But then on this particular strike, where there was the second strike on 2 survivors on a capsized boat, that also demands, I think, a much more robust congressional investigation, and I will be pushing for that.
And then based on the classified briefings and the video that you have been allowed to review, regarding that specific strike, what did you see?
Yeah, there's 2 things that are deeply disturbing about this. One is what I saw and what is on that video. So you have, the initial strike is shown. Boat catches on fire, descends into a cloud of smoke, and then eventually as the smoke clears, you see that the boat has capsized and there are 2 survivors clinging to that portion of the boat. And all it's capsized and you just have the bow of the boat. It's impossible to tell whether or not the boat has split in half and that's all that remains, or if the rest of the boat is underwater. Seems to me it probably would have split in half given the strength of that first strike. And then they are clinging to the side of that boat for 43 minutes, and then the decision is made to strike them. And I think that's a very disturbing decision based on the law of war, what shipwrecked means, and how we are supposed to not kill survivors who are no longer capable of being a threat. I think they clearly fall into that category. But then when you hear the rationale from Admiral Bradley and others, that basically we have decided, the president has decided, that anybody affiliated with drug trafficking in these 24 identified narcotics trafficking groups, who they call narco-terrorists, if you are affiliated with them and or carrying drugs, you are a legitimate target for lethal force of the United States military anywhere in the world where we might find you. That is an enormous expansion of presidential power without congressional approval. And that was Admiral Bradley's reasoning. The order was kill all 11 people on board because they're legitimate targets and destroy the drugs. And he clung to the idea that the drugs might still be underneath that boat. I find that highly questionable from the video I saw. But he also was, to some degree, authorized to kill those 2 survivors. And they're stranded at sea, which is a huge problem, but also just to have the power to kill anyone who is affiliated with these 24 groups, again, without congressional approval. This is the kind of thing that Trump said he was going to get us out of, not get us into.
If it is unlawful, as some are saying, Who should be held accountable? The pilots, the operators who carried out the missions, the commanders who gave the orders, the senior officials? I mean, who is responsible and what would the consequences be?
Yeah, well, all of the above, which is why the first question of was it unlawful needs to be answered. And I'm not going to make that judgment without a full investigation. But I think there is sufficient evidence for that full investigation. Now, ultimately, my opinion, President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, they are the ones who are most responsible for this. They set up the rules of engagement. They made this decision to go forward without congressional authorization and, to my mind, contrary to the Constitution. But under the law of war, and this is why that video that Senator Kelly and the other 5 members of Congress did saying to troops, don't follow illegal orders. And by the way, all they did in that video was restate the UCMJ. It's in there, clear as day. You're not just not obligated to follow unlawful orders, you are obligated to not follow unlawful orders. So if you're in that chain of command that made that decision, you are potentially liable for that action.
Your investigation is just getting underway. Congressman Smith, we so appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joyce. I appreciate the chance.